The MXGP of Trentino, a staple on the calendar since 2013, is a perfect example of what MXGP is, can be, should be. All of the good things about MXGP come from this picturesque venue of Pietramurata, which is a bit too much of a mouthful for the intro. But the point is, after some negativity in recent weeks, Trentino has it all. And we will discuss it all in this episode of the MXGP Podcast Show, which is, of course, backed by Polisport and Prox Racing Parts, so thank you to them for all of their support. I'm your host, Lewis Phillips, a big fan of Trentino, as you may have figured out for yourself, joined by Paddock Pass Podcast and Insider Stories from Motorcycle Grand Prix author, Adam Wheeler. How's it going?
Hey, Lewis. You almost got the title right. But
is that not it? What is it? Insider Stories from Motorcycle Grand Prix?
No, it's Motorcycle Grand Prix Insider Stories from World Championship Racing. I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but the thing that stood out for me most from your introduction, which wasn't as professional as it was last week, it's Pietramurata as well.
Yeah, I don't know.
You said it's the kind of how Grand Prix should be. Do you think so?
Full gates, fantastic scenery, great racing, big crowd, great atmosphere that comes through the feed. It encapsulates the magic that MXGP has compared to maybe pro motocross, where each round is similar. Trentino is a unique one-time experience a year that you don't get anywhere else in the world, and that's part of the magic that comes from going to all of these random places. Perhaps.
Okay, well done. You summed it up perfectly. In fact, the only thing I would add somewhat against the event is just the appalling infrastructure. But apart from that, I think, like you say, it ticked many boxes. And the addition of Tony Cairoli in the MXGP gate also helped tremendously. I think there was many drone shots around the circuit, and you can see from those images that there's 3 to 4 kind of pockets of spectator zones. One of them is filled completely by Tim Gajser's fan club, who make the relatively short journey across the border from Slovenia. But then the rest of it was also rammed, despite the slightly inclement conditions. By all accounts, the weather was good on Saturday, but then pretty miserable on Sunday. Typical kind of spring fair in kind of central northern Europe at this time. But I agree with you. I think, Trentino has its own character. And I was trying to think of the first time the GP took place there. In 2013, you mentioned it. I mean, that's spot on. So it's been, 12 years. But it feels like we've had more GPs there because it was such a capable or willing venue to host multiple GPs during the pandemic. And was it not the site of Ben Watson's first Grand Prix win?
It was the second. It was the second and arguably the most important, because everyone expected Ben Watson to win in the sand and Lommel. Ben Watson winning at Lommel, everyone could kind of see that. For him to back it up heroically on the hard pack, the opposing conditions of Trentino.
What stands out for you from Trentino? I mean, Ryan Villapota's loop out and retirement is pretty prominent, but also that wonderful Grand Prix a few years ago when Tony Cairoli found one of the very few overtaking spots on the step up, going taking that inside line. He came back from a first turn crash, I think, and got P4, which was enough for the overall win. That drove the whole crowd bananas. Other than that, I can remember Tommy Sell doing some particularly awesome whips coming across the section that was then new. There was like kind of a rhythm section. Had a huge double onto a tabletop next to where they used to have the Monster Energy rig. I'm not sure if they still place it in that location, but the GP has been kind of half memorable, even though it's not the most expansive venue. It's a bit of a nitty bitty track.
Yeah, you can always count on it for great racing, I feel, more so than maybe any other venue. And all of those memories are great. But what stands out to me is the 2021 triple header, which was the best week of racing I've ever seen in my life, point blank. The racing, the battles, the narratives, the drama, all of the superlatives.
Was that when Tom Vial broke his foot?
Yeah, I forgot about that,
That's why he kind of lost the championship.
Yeah, because he was making
coming on strong.
Yeah, he was making a very late run at Renault, wasn't he? And it was kind of not going to happen, but it was one eye open a little bit.
It was also that time when Jeffrey Herlings had a big crash. I mean, that kind of put the championship. Was it 2 in this? Is it the same moto? Or
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember, but
yeah. This was.
But I wouldn't say it's been particularly great racing there. I mean, the track doesn't lend itself to great racing.
Well, close racing. Is it the old adage of is close racing good racing? And it's kind of 50-50 on people's personal preference. Like, if you have no passes but 5 riders separated by 5 seconds, is that a great race? Everyone has a different opinion, I think.
True. I mean, that kind of hikes up the tension. And also, if the crowd are getting behind one of those riders that are in a group charging, I just think it's one of those tracks where it can be quite tricky to make up time, even though it was quite technical last weekend for the latest round, round 5 of MXGP. In the past, it's very start dependent, the results, and it can be a bit sort of follow my leader. But yeah, I wouldn't if you said there's the MXGP calendar, tell me some of the tracks for great racing, that's not the first one that would spring to mind.
No, but then in opposition of that, I would say I'm not sure if any of them would spring to mind.
Well, any sand track are always...
Yeah, but then apart from that, I think Trentino just springs to mind purely because of the magic of it. And it's funny, if that track was dropped into China, I feel like it wouldn't be as well received. There'd be a lot more criticism about the dirt, the layout, the rocks, etc., etc. But because it's such a fantastic venue, similar to Neuquén, Neuquén wasn't actually a great racetrack, but the surrounding venue and the magic of it all kind of helped alleviate some of the criticism. And I think Trentino maybe falls under the same category because everyone enjoys being there. Riva del Garda, 15 minutes away, one of the best places on earth. Yeah. No?
Oh, wow.
No?
Oh, goodness. One of the best places on earth?
I don't.
Well, I mean, Lake Garda is very pretty. I kind of thought the track was a bit weird this time. It seemed like they'd worked over a lot of the top layer of soil. It seemed very soft. I mean, kind of shallow earth, a little bit sandy in places almost. But then it just tends to hide these kind of knuckles and bumps and makes it pretty difficult technically to... it's one of those ones where you see riders having weird crashes because they expected to hit a corner or an exit with traction, and then suddenly it just pops them up, and they have a tip over. So it's a hard place to judge, but I think the fact it could be left completely stony, blue groove, and horrendous. But I think there's quite a big effort made by the track crew to get it into a presentable shape.
Yeah, it's a staple, and to your point about the amount of races it's run, I'd argue that it's perhaps run more Grand Prix than anyone since 2013 because of the COVID boost. It never missed a year, so it's at a minimum of 1 each year. So it really is MXGP's staple event, I feel. Maybe that's a bit... Do you think
it's better than Maggiora for the Italian Grand Prix?
Ooh, well, Maggiora has a history, which gives it an immediate leg up, but...
In terms of layout, I mean, it's a close run thing, right? I mean, Maggiora is not exactly flush with overtaking spots either.
Yeah, I would go Trentino, I think. Better for viewing as well.
Yes. Yeah.
And as much as the infrastructure sucks, it's not really any better at Maggiora.
Yeah, as Italian Grand Prix venues go, I mean, it's better than Riola, but then, sand is always a great leveler. That's why it's a shame we don't go to tracks like Lierop anymore. Valgundspad as well. When it was wet, when it was hot and dry, it was a bit more gnarly, for want of a better word. But when it was wet, it just got rougher and deeper. It was better.
Yeah, that comes back to what we said about having the nations in Italy. There isn't really a venue that can host that, even though Italy has always been one of the strongest locations for that event. There just isn't really a spot for it, but that should be in the rotation, without doubt. But anyway, one rider who mastered Trentino, once again. Hardly surprising, we are continuing the trend of Tim Gajser's year. 1-1, 39-point lead. Struggling for much to say because, once again, Tim is the best rider in this series. He's going to win this championship. 1-1 is a normal day at the office. It's shocking if he gets 2-2. And especially at Trentino, a track that has been very, very kind to him over the years, and kind of a track that just fits Tim Gajser's skill set perfectly.
Yeah, good call. I did think after Sardinia we might get a bit more of a retaliation from Romain Febvre. And then I was kind of watching Febvre riding, thinking, he's looking good. He's looking fast. But then he makes a mistake. And it just seems like those crucial errors for Romain are the thing that stopped him from winning more Grand Prix or being in contention for more championships. But, this was also, we were praising his sand skills for, the Sardinian Grand Prix. But I think this kind of like stony surface where, you're looking for traction all day long around every corner would play right into his hands as well. So I was really disappointed he kind of gave that moto away to Gajser. But then this is almost like a home GP for the HRC, man. I think it was the scene of his first career victory 11 years ago. So it's with that kind of backing. In fact, I would probably say that this is the one Grand Prix where Tim is probably the most nervous. There's like a big stage, there's a big audience for him, and he knows what he can do around there. I did wonder if Gajser was actually out of third gear at any point, because you do get the feeling he could have stretched away and pulled this thing further if he wanted.
Yeah, I was having this conversation actually with someone about how exciting Gajser is to watch ride, and I was like, no, he just looks so smooth and in control that it's not very flashy. And then this person I was talking to was like, no, it's so like flashy. And I was like, really opposing viewpoints. But I feel like Gajser's just smooth, methodical, in control, doesn't put a foot wrong. Again, words that no one would have used to describe Gajser 10 years ago. So it is once again incredible the transformation that we've had. But it's for those reasons that I just don't see him putting a foot wrong. And this championship is done, unfortunately. Not unfortunately for Honda HRC, but...
Yeah. I mean, props to Honda, because the bike seems good out of the starts. This might be recency bias. I can't really, recall many times when they've been bad out of the gate, but both Ruben Fernandez and Tim Gajser just put those HSC bikes right at the sort of the peak of the field going around the first corner. And that was also a key element in some decent results in Trentino.
I had a text from a non-MXGP rider on Saturday night at like midnight, and it just said, my insight, Febvre will win the championship.
Oh,
and I have no idea where this person was coming from or what they're seeing. And is
there a chance they could have had some alcoholic beverages at that time?
I even messaged them 24 hours later and said, not a good day for this insight. Because equally, as much as we say that Trentino suits Gajser, also that's kind of a Febvre spot as well, I'd say.
That's what I just said. Yeah, it should have been his Grand Prix.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. It could have been Beaver.
Yeah, but also it's come off the back of Sardinia, where he's just taken a win. He's got a little bit of momentum.
With the track position in Moto 1, that at very least should have been his moment.
Yeah.
And actually, he had the fastest lap of the race as well, which is somewhat surprising to me. But again, that speaks to how methodical and patient Tim is now, which also is a direct result of the competition, I think. Because I think when Herlings and Prado are there was less comfort with that strategy or that approach. But let me ask you this before we move on from Gajser. Is this the best Gajser ever?
No.
What is, though?
Well, I mean, you can't look... I mean, his debut year when he came in as a 20-year-old and won, I mean, he was just the perfect blend of sort of raw power, naivety, fearlessness, pre-serious injuries. I don't think... I mean, motocross racers have phases throughout their career, don't they? I mean, Gajser's one is that he's pretty similar all the way through, but I still don't think the impact of that 2016 season will be matched again for quite a while. I mean, it was phenomenal, I thought.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that, because I also agree, but zeroing in more specifically, the first half of 2016 is for me when Gajser and also Febvre were at their best. Because the speed and the pace that those two were pushing early in 2016, St. Jean sticks out to me, was just phenomenal. And maybe that's also just a bit of, like, that was my second full year in MXGP, so maybe I look at it with a bit of mystique, just because I was more naive maybe, or hadn't seen as much, but that will always be the reference point for Tim in my mind.
Can I also say, I really thought he was good last year. I thought he was great. I mean, it says a lot for Prado that he won the championship in the end, because, I thought Gajser did pretty much everything he needed to do. He just missed a couple of moto checkered flags here. And that's why the championship was so good, Lewis, because it went down all the way to the wire, and it was just about who would make the first little mistake, or whose bike would let them down, at that crucial moment. And in the end, it was Tim. But I thought... the rate, he had something like 17 podiums. I mean, that's that kind of consistency, that elite level consistency every single week. You know how fucking hard that must be to do. It's okay, Gajser might not have the same intensity of threat in 2025, but I thought he was awesome last year too.
Yeah, if you do look at his career to date, exclude the 2023 season as a whole, I guess, because of that injury, FIMA was it? Actually sustained at Trentino. Consistency has been incredible. And for that reason, he will be your 2025 champion. So congrats to Tim.
Lewis, I have a question for you. I don't want you to put aside any personal preferences right now, okay?
Oh, God.
Gajser or Herlings?
Is there a second part of this question, or is it just...
Well, I mean, they both got 5 world championships. Herlings has the most amount of Grand Prix wins, but then Gajser he's already made his space in HRC history, which is pretty impressive when you consider the names he's got going there as well, who's ridden those famous red bikes. But, considering the statistics and what we're talking about and the regularity, I mean, Gajser came in 2016, was the same year and then Herlings came in 2017, so he's had one more season. In fact, Gajser's probably had more because Herlings missed, in effect.
Gajser's probably started twice as many races as Herlings, which is... See, well, you want my opinion just as like an all-timer?
No, but yeah, because they're kind of cut from the same cloth, aren't they?
Look, you've set me up here because I can't answer this question without being told that I'm biased. But no, I'm curious as to why you would say Jeffrey. It's Jeffrey because Jeffrey is Jeffrey, and
you're going cultural.
No. I'm going full picture. Give me time.
Okay.
The Grand Prix win total is one that will be referenced for the next 50 years, whereas, truth be told, neither Herlings or Gajser will be the reference point for titles won. That'll be Everts and Cairoli, unless I still think there's a chance that Gajser could get to 8. 9, 8, maybe? But I don't think Gajser gets to 10. So Herlings will become the reference point for that, whereas neither rider will be the reference point for titles. And also, there's always going to be this charm with Herlings of what could have been. Like, he was so good, and how much better could he have been? Whereas I think for Gajser, we have a much more well-rounded picture, so there's less room for interpretation, which in turn means there's less room for... It more just gets filed away as like a complete story. Yeah. Whereas the Chronicles of Herlings will live on in infamy forever. And certainly as long as I'm doing podcasts.
I think there is grounds for a deep dive story on it. And I'm sure there probably has been done already. But also consider the backgrounds of each rider. I mean, Herlings as well, coming into Grand Prix as a 15-year-old. Gajser was pretty much a similar age, but then Herlings has gone on to become the absolute don of Dutch motocross, whereas Gajser came from Slovenia. Imagine sort of, and of course he has a slightly quirky family background as well, the heavy paternal influence there. I just think, isn't it more remarkable that Tim Gajser has won what he has? He's been HRC's main guy, and he's been able to just be so fucking consistent for years and years and years, considering where he's from. Rather than say Jeffrey, who's very much like Lommel, I don't know, sort of Lommel bred, if that makes sense. And
considering where Gajser's come from again, from 2013 to 2015, where his highlight reel of crashes was just unbelievable. No one would have counted on us in 10 years' time talking about how solid and faultless and consistent and smooth he is. So that in itself, it is true also that, like, I know a lot of people were very high on Gajser when he first moved into MX2. I never thought he would do this. So, and I know there are some people that will strongly disagree with that, because I know some people really highly rated it. But I never thought that Tim Gajser would be a Jeffrey Herlings level person, or a Jorge Prado level person, or an Antonio Cairoli level person. I thought he'd be more of like a Dessau, a Paulin, if anything.
No, I don't know. I think the signs were there because he was that good, that young.
The signs were there when? Like, are you talking? The
signs were there when he jumped out of EMX 250 and was already, creating a name for himself in MX2. And what was he, like 16 years old, 17 years old? I think, but then obviously like career decisions and crossroads and stuff like that, and being able to sort of link up with Giacomo Garibaldi and follow Honda all the way through, that's like another Herlings-esque feature of his career, because he would have been, the longest serving Honda athlete as well, I think.
Yes. Okay. I'm reluctant to say this because I believe I have no doubt it's absolute bullshit, but for the effort, in the interest of entertainment, I'm going to say it. I got a text at the weekend. We know that there's heavy rumours that the Coenens are talking to HRC. HRC is interested in the Coenens. That rumour is fairly well positioned on both sides of the Atlantic. For MXGP, this is. I think the USA plans have been stalled. I also heard that Yamaha have made an offer or shown interest, which I'd never heard because I'd always heard HRC or Kawasaki, but randomly someone said Yamaha as well. Someone said to me, Tim's contract's up. I could see HRC replacing Tim and bringing the Coenens in and not re-signing Tim, which is absolutely insane, yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because that was my reply. I was just like, absolutely. I was like, are you telling me this because you know this? Or is this just a crazy theory? Because if you know this, it's a very different... Okay, it's crazy. Good.
But it's a case of who wants to invest in the Coenens, and HRC would have seen how, how much success they've had with the Lawrences. So I can understand that. But I mean, from what I know, Gajser is incredibly low maintenance. I mean, he trains by himself. He has his own facility. He doesn't make super huge demands on the team, which I think would be the opposing case if the Coenens were to sign. Because also they're very young, both of them. They need sort of guidance. They need, I don't know,
training
education, help. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we should talk about the Coenens because again, all the ingredients were there in the Trentino GP, but just again, the litany of mistakes just means they're not standing on the top step of the podium as frequently as they should. But Gajser, I think, he's embedded in there. I mean, unless
he is HRC.
Yeah, or unless someone somewhere thinks, listen, we need to take a bit of a different direction with the bike. We need maybe more feedback. We need a different kind of development emphasis. We need a different generation of rider. Then you can say, okay, let's invest in the Coenens as 19-year-olds rather than, say, the rider who's nearing his 30s.
Do you know what would be sick? And this is just complete fantasy land. If KTM got Gajser and then HRC retaliated by getting Herlings and they just swapped.
A complete swap around.
Yes, that'd be great. But I don't think that's going to happen either. So just disregard all of that conversation. Apart from the Coenen and HRC, that is the one part of that conversation that does have some sort of flicker of truth to it. I should have said this off the top, but truth be told, the Grand Prix of Trentino was very much what we've seen thus far. Tim being great, Febvre being great. Coldenhoff is now just a podium regular. So we may bounce around a little more just on random topics this podcast rather than celebrating another Febvre podium or another Coldenhoff podium. But I do want to say this, because this is a very interesting conversation. Since Fantic entered MXGP, which was the start of last year, they've had one more 450 podium than Yamaha.
Ooh, but that's a bit unfair, isn't it? I mean, Gertz was injured all last year, so was Renaux. So you got to give some context there. But they're essentially the same bike anyway.
Okay, that's fair, but I think you can't deny the facts even so, because injuries are a part of this sport and a part of this analysis, I think, in this sport, where it's like you have to hire guys who can stay healthy and you have to hire guys... Yeah. We can turn this into another Herlings conversation if you want, and that'll just be a continuous theme. But no, I think that's quite startling, and even especially more spicy when you consider that the Fantic team is the Wilvo team that Yamaha dropped. So technically, if you want to lay it out more intriguingly, then say the Wilvo team, since being dropped by Yamaha, have had more podiums than Yamaha. That's even more eyebrow raising.
And they should never have got rid of Sewer.
Well, I don't. That was that.
Well, I know Jeremy wanted to leave and wanted out.
Yeah, they never should have treated Sewer so poorly.
Yes.
Because what made Sewer want to leave when really that could have been avoided if they'd just acted with some respect for all he did for the brand. Because actually, post Febvre, Yamaha's record is irrelevant without Sewer. Sewer is the only bright light. Other than that, you could say that the entire state of the manufacturer has left them feeling pretty blue.
Yeah. Oh, very good.
Thank you.
What I mean, Yamaha's management of their motocross setup has been a little strange, right?
Controversial?
Yeah, they haven't really made the most obvious moves, it seems. Maybe it's to do with budget and we don't know. I mean, that's the kind of thing they don't tell you. They're not going to say, yeah, we've decided to sign, a satellite team structure based on the fact that we have hardly any cash left. I mean, even if that was the case, it would be clouded over something else, like logistically or operationally. We feel this is a better fit for us. So it just seems bizarre, really. Some of the choices they've made. But then, we are talking with hindsight, because Jago Gertz, especially after Redbud and making that appearance on the 450 at the Nations, you think, right, okay, this kid is fast tracking into some decent results on the Premier class. You could, again, with hindsight, look at his MX2 career and think, well, does he really have the mental chops to be able to, cast himself as a prominent figure in the elite levels of motocross, because the mistakes came at key times. And then Renaux as well. I mean, that's also an investment, I think, in an incredibly decent motocross, as we've said. But then the decisions and the fortune have just been devastating, I think, for Yamaha's motocross presence. The way they handled Thibault Benistant as well after his injury. He sort of propped up with another sort of late mugging of Andrea Adamo in Trentino. I'm a bit confused by Yamaha's strategy at the moment.
Yeah, and I would love to sit down with Alex Kowalski, Mike Wazowski, and just kind of get some clarification on where he sees the errors in the last 5 years, what he would have liked to do, but for what the rider didn't sign or the contract didn't go through or whatever else. It does seem a little bit lost. I mean, we've talked about it this year, how Yamaha was rivaling KTM and maybe overtaking KTM as the powerhouse of MXGP, and now they're borderline. Yeah. I'm trying not to be harsh here, but they're borderline like the laughing stock of the paddock because they had this in their midst almost, and everyone's kind of like, so how have we ended up here?
Well, I mean, would you put them ahead of Triumph as the second best manufacturer in MX2? I mean, they got to be on level pegging. Whereas before, I think they were, like you say, powerhouses.
I don't know. The stories I've heard about this hot metal team are alarming, to say the least. And aside from Benistant, who's hot and cold, is there anything really there? Whereas Triumph, you can say now, McClellan has been turned into a winner. Harrop delivered.
HRC have invested. They've put their money where their mouth is in comparatively with MXGP back into the MX2 program. So, yeah, it does seem like Yamaha went from being, like you say, the orange threat to being, now bystanders almost, which is a bit of a shame. But, sport is always so cyclical, isn't it?
What do you think about this on a semi-related note? I had this conversation with a manufacturer here because we were having a conversation about the state of said manufacturer. And I was basically we were having different conversations because I was talking about it as a global thing, basically putting America and MXGP together. And they only were talking about America, which of course is par for the course. And they were like, you can't consider MXGP. And I was like, no, like in my minds, I think of Yamaha, I compartmentalize both parts, but as a whole, I consider the whole picture. And they were like, no, that's nothing to do. Like you can't judge. And I'm like, but if you're performing well here and the MXGP side is sucking, then that still doesn't paint a good light on the manufacturer as a whole. And it wasn't Yamaha I was talking to, just to be clear. Am I off base? I think you've got to have a little more of a more worldly view than just like that's irrelevant, but maybe you don't put so much emphasis.
Yeah, but we've known, I mean, thanks to HRC's bizarre tendency to be more open and transparent in the last 5 years, both with American Honda and also, the European team. You can see the depth of the connection with Japan and everything that's going on there. I mean, Trey Canard's even riding prototype electric bikes. There seems to be much more cohesion and unity and communication compared to, say, how Yamaha has been with the strange organization with Star, with the MX2 squad that were doing some fantastic development when they were under Hans Korver's stewardship, a couple of years with MX2. And now I don't really get how it works, for Yamaha's case at least. But now I don't think you're wrong to consider the global view, especially for like Japanese or Austrian brands. But then you do have certain subsidiaries of the American-based manufacturer, but they have their own budget, they have their own priorities, their own objectives, sometimes their own technical directions as well. So it's hard to say, Lewis, I think.
Well, this will maybe give it away, but this manufacturer is having a lot of technical problems in MXGP and much fewer in America. And they were like, yeah, we'd rather it if you just ignored the MXGP technical issues. I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that. There are, if the issues are happening there, then there are issues. I can't just say the bike is perfect because look at this. That's maybe giving it away. I'd imagine it's much easier to figure out who I was talking to with that.
I have a question for you. Just sort of looking back through the overall standings. Jan Panzer, another Slovenian rider. Do you think he just managed to inhale all the good air surrounding Tim Gajser at this Grand Prix and sort of stole a little bit of attention away from the Gajser corner to make that top 7? I think that's got to be one of his better results in MXGP.
Here's a question for you. Is Jan Panzer being done a disservice by the fact that he's very clearly hit the glass ceiling as far as his potential and opportunity within the paddock? And I don't know why, but I've never heard anyone say, I'm thinking about signing Panzer for next year. Or what do you think about Panzer? And now maybe it's because he seems to be very, very structured and comfortable in his JP253 setup. So maybe that's it. But should he not be in the conversation for a Honda SR Moto Blues Motul or a JK Racing or even Beta sign Tom Cock? Should they not have signed Jan Panzer instead? I don't know.
So you're saying he's in the eternal perennial privateer?
Yeah.
There's not really going to be much. I don't know how old he is though. Was he mid-20s?
Yeah, it must be because he's been in MXGP now for 2, 3, 4 years.
Well, it was in MX2. I mean, MX2 he was quite prominent. I mean, it was a couple of the young Spaniards we're seeing now, Uri Oliveira and some of the other guys, just being a consistent top 10 guy. But I thought just to pop up and take that P7 in Trentino overall was pretty good going. Maybe he's just like a Valentin Guillot, is able to shine 2 to 3 weekends a year.
Yeah, I think that is it. But I also think that's doing him a disservice because he is not this high, but he's semi-regular top 13 guy. I do want to highlight quickly Moto scores alone. Maxime Renaux has gone 2-1, 10-11, 10-5, 17, DNS 4-7, which is that's a hair-raising picture. I don't know, you can find any sort of emotion you want from that. Joy, happiness, heartbreak, defeat, confidence, lack of confidence, all of that, all of the above. And he's now
coming back from injury as well.
Well, 2 injuries.
Yeah.
Although I would like some clarification. I would like some clarification actually on how how the spitting up blood and not being allowed to ride Moto 2 develops. Why was he not allowed to race there, and why was he cleared and clearly 90% in Trentino? That I wasn't expecting him to be so good there, to be honest.
Did you see that In Front Motor Racing are kind of in collaboration, of course, with FIM, are having a concussion seminar this weekend at the Swiss Grand Prix on Sunday? I wonder what that's in response to. I mean, I think it's a great initiative. I mean, this weekend is a bit of a strange Grand Prix because we have practice and then the qualifying races on Saturday, and then they're electing to do this thing on a Sunday, which says to me they're really only going to be lecturing or educating a certain element of the paddock who are camping on site, because obviously the Grand Prix races are on Easter Monday.
I forgot we're doing that again. That's crazy.
Yeah. So this podcast will be maybe a bit later, middle of next week.
Yeah, that's true.
For Frauenfeld. But, I think it's, like I said, it's a good initiative. I think the FIM and the medical side of the federation need to be doing talks like this. I'm sure professional motocrossers are well in tune to the capabilities of their physical bodies and injuries and whatever else. And I'll be amazed if there's anyone in the gate who hasn't hit their head in some kind of regard, whether it's been quite a heavy blow or just like a cancing impact on a crash. But, this is the sort of thing I think needs to happen. I mean, if I was there, I would have been in attendance because I'm interested to see how the FIM have their protocols for this.
Yeah, I don't know if this is for riders and teams or for media, or it was sent out as part of the media opportunities, but that kind of is a very broad title that is kind of come one, come all. At least that's how I take it. And it doesn't really say who's doing it either, does it?
Yeah, it's the person who's going to be the medical director of that particular race.
Oh, okay. So it's not like, a helmet manufacturer, a doctor. Well, it is a doctor, but... it's not someone, an expert flying in. It's just the guy who's there all the time.
No, it's a Dr. Aldrich Janssen.
Unfamiliar.
The FIM medical director for the event. So the CMI, which is the Motocross Commission, well, the CMS is the Motocross Commission, but the CMI together with the IMR, these two groups are putting on the seminar. But, it's, I think it's good. It's positive.
Yeah, always nice to see that sort of proactive approach, I would say. Speaking of proactive, we need to be quite proactive in discussing Jeffrey Herlings, because some people are calling for his head. Some people think this is far from good enough, and admittedly, I did think it would be better than this. However...
It's been a week.
We know the lack of bike time. We know the injury he's coming back from. We know his history with injuries. We know that he told me that he would be much better mid-May sort of time. So we have that reference point. The panic button is unjustified, is kind of my point. Is it a slower start than maybe most would have expected? Sure.
No. It's been a week. And, he did well to come back in the sand because that gave him a bit of a soft reintroduction rather than just, entering the season with Trentino.
That's punny.
But, I don't think he... got the starts that he needed in Pietramurata, and also I think you just got to give the guy time. I mean, he finished 9th overall, just ahead of Ben Watson. Jeffrey and Ben, you just don't see those two circulating close together.
Well,
on many occasions,
I have reports that the beta was behind Jeffrey, revving the bike to get this 84 guy out of the way.
Oh wow.
So that's the world we're living in now, which is who would have thought? Two titans of Trentino, but no.
Can I just give you my final opinion on Jeffrey? Way too early to have any judgment, but considering that Herlings is in a contract year, I think he needs to be showing some different kind of mentality or maturity to his career in general. Not entering stupid local races, or going to say like a Dutch championship race where he can pick up 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 euros or whatever it is just to appear, and think bigger plans, think Grand Prix racing, think World Championship. I mean, we know Jeffrey's MO has been to race, race himself fit, race himself confident, race to get his arm pump out the way before a Grand Prix. That's been what he's needed to do. But the risks now at this point of his career, and also, effectively been in a chance of another title because of, an injury in a Dutch national race, that after the end of a pretty solid season of consistent running, I think there's people that will be questioning, because Jeffrey Herlings comes with a price tag. I mean, admittedly so, he's amazing. He's one of the all-timers, and, he's not going to sign and ride for someone for nothing. So if you invest in Jeffrey Herlings, you need to be assured that he's not going to be blowing most of that cash because he's doing some nothing race and risks potential injury. So I think it's going to need him to come out and say, I'm committed to being a GP rider for another 2 years. Either that sways KTM or it convinces somebody else to make the investment that it requires.
I'm going to do all I can to get Jeffrey on this podcast soon, maybe next week. I have spoken
Well, I
to him
delivered
about
Prado last year, so you need to step up.
I mean, there will be very little event analysis on that podcast. Just forewarning, it will be very much a Jeffrey episode. But yeah, because I think it would be good for him to come out and kind of clarify his position. Because obviously he did that story in a Dutch newspaper that basically said this could be his last year, depending on what sort of contract he gets for 2026. But there's so much more to that position than just that kind of surface level insight. So I think we can help our friend. Let's help our friend and get him into the public eye with some nice podcasting. Great ride from Ben Watson again, as we said. First moto was amazing, came through the pack. And if you're a Ben Watson supporter, here's your starter pack, to use a old-fashioned trend now. Next, we'll be doing the Ice Bucket Challenge. The Ben Watson supporter starter pack is first 10 minutes, you take note of the position, and you go, meh. Second 10 minutes, you start looking up, and you go, wonder where he's going to be able to get to. And then the last 10 minutes, you walk away, and you come back, and you go, fucking hell, he's made a lot of passes. Because that's essentially, I was watching the first moto intermittently because I was going through an airport, so like had to put my phone down for security. And when I realised that he finished in that first moto in 12th, I was like, how? Because a lot, like with 3 laps to go, he was like 17th, 16th. But for whatever reason, I mean, we know the beta is underpowered and not great out of the gate, for one, when it does leave the gate. But also, even in the Yamaha days, Ben Watson comes alive in the last 10 minutes. It's where he does his best work. So it's just magnified more so in a situation where the bike now also does its best work in the last 10 minutes. So great work from Ben. I mean, and also this is only Ben's 5th race back from torn ACL. So him and Jeffrey, just 2 ACL buddies.
Dodgy knees, just inside the top 10.
We have to give Marcel Stauffer his credit, don't we, in 11th overall. Again, not maybe a complete surprise, a name that pops up fairly regularly in MXGP and has always kind of been a factor in the hard-packed tracks, but this is still upper end of his ceiling, so I think that deserves its props, and I'm sure that you'll see him again in Tuchenthal or somewhere do something similar.
Yeah, also he had a big injury, didn't he? Year before last. So, I mean, that was quite sort of serious, a back injury. So to come back from that and still get into competitiveness where you're running in MXGP, then full props to him.
Once again, we started this podcast thinking that we would have no time at all. And once again, we've ended up in a position where we actually have no time left because we've been rambling. So,
Lewis, what happened to Calvin Verlanderen?
Well, he crashed in the second moto, didn't he? And cleaned out a Marshall.
Yes. Yeah. At the beginning, yeah.
And the bad luck just continues to follow him. He can't get this train back on the tracks at the moment, which I think is frustrating because he's certainly ridden better than his results would indicate. I still want to have this skirts discussion, but we don't have time again, so we'll put a pin in that. But we need to talk about Cairoli, who...
Well, hang on. What about Andrea Bonacorsi? Because Calvin was ahead of him in 12th. Bonacorsi was 13th, and he was on the podium a couple of weeks ago. Or was it last week in Sardinia? I can't remember where he was.
Kozar. He had a moto podium in Sardinia.
Yes. But then, you'd think at his home GP, he would be performing a bit better. So I don't know if there's an underlying story there.
Well, I'm just trying to find the PR because that will tell us exactly.
Well, he was 8th in the second moto, but the first one, I'm not sure if he had a crash at the start, but I think he was down in like 15th or 16th or something like that.
All in all, it was a good weekend, said Andrea Bonacorsi, except for race 1, when I didn't get off to the best start and had an issue with my goggles while trying to move up the order. I couldn't see very well. I lost a few positions towards the end. In race 2, I struggled a bit at the start again, but I managed to make my way up and finish 9th. I know that the speed and fitness are there to be up there, but you also need to start at the front to be with the other guys right from the beginning. This week, we will get back to work to be ready for Switzerland. It's a fairly anonymous report there.
Very articulate.
Yes. Cairoli.
Yes.
Results-wise, right where I imagined. I think I said 15 to 20, but I could understand a peak of 13th, which ultimately was his peak. I was impressed, though, by his... what would you say? Staying power, feistiness in the early laps. Like, he looked like he belonged and like he hadn't missed a beat at points across the weekend, which... naturally, he got tired. I think it wasn't Again,
Yeah.
this wasn't on his calendar as a must-attend event since November. It was last minute. So, all in all, I think brilliant. Great to see him there. 1, great riding. 2, and also great that at his age and with his legacy, he can accept. His ego isn't inflated enough where he can't accept a ride or a result like this.
Yeah, I mean, again, well summarized. I think also you have to give him credit for keeping going. It's not like he's one of these riders where I'm not going to race if I don't think I can win. I think he was incredibly realistic about what it was, and it was a PR exercise for Ducati. He put the sort of Desmo 450 right up there, and again, that motorcycle just seems to have the goods on the start. Cairoli broke his rear wheel or something, I think, on Saturday, which gave him the last gate position. But Tony's always been a good starter, and then combined with that bike, he did the job. So I do wonder if it'll be the last GP we see. Of course, Guadagnini is going to be out for a while, but I don't think Cairoli is going to be racing in Switzerland.
No, but he wants to do Matterley, I heard.
Right. Okay.
And of course, he's on the docket for Redbud Pro Motocross.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like you said, I doubt he's done 2 35, 40-minute motos, in one day for a long, long time. So I think this was respectable. But I do hope that, he gets to a point where he says to everyone, look, this is my last ever Grand Prix, because it deserves a lot of fanfare. And I'm sure, he was feted at the weekend anyway because, it was his home GP. But, I wouldn't say that Trentino is Tony's favourite track. I hope he picks somewhere like Matterley or Lommel where, Lommel will be pretty brutal, I think, to come out of retirement and do. But I do hope there is some sort of announcement. This is going to be his last MXGP appearance because it should be, celebrated.
Is there a chance that Jeffrey Herlings does his last GP before Antonio Cairoli? Has to be.
No, I don't think so. I can see Herlings racing next year.
Oh yeah, next year. But could you see
Tony,
Cairoli?
No, I think Tony will be... Ducati as well, and they need to sort of focus forward, don't they? Yes, of course, there are injuries, but then, I'm surprised they haven't really embraced harder the setup they have for MotoGP, where they have, a rider called Michele Pirro, who's a long-standing test rider, and who's filled in for, injured riders now and again. I think Ducati needs to look at Guadagnini and Sua as their MXGP riders, and they need a capable testing replacement. And Tony's he's just too old for that now. I think they need to find someone else who could, stand in or, keep developing the bike.
That's quite scathing.
Why?
I don't know. Is Cairoli too old for testing?
He's going to be getting towards his 40s now. testing racing.
Okay. Well, you're talking about simply gathering data at a race.
No, it's someone who has the level to be able to step in and do MXGP motos.
Right, okay.
And as every season passes on, Tony's getting less and less likely to do that. And that's why I think, he's going to have his last GP before Jeffrey.
There is a chance in my head that Jeffrey retires at the end of this year and Cairoli does a GP next year. That's not off the table, I don't think.
I think Herlings needs one more go at a championship. I don't think he can retire at the end of this year just saying, well, 2025, that was it. It started shit and maybe ended okay. I think he needs one more full run.
If he retires at the end of this year, I think me and you should go to Australia and do Herlings time.
On the Nations?
No, because we need to be there for his last GP. He would want that.
Well, the way things are going, they can only get sort of 15, 16 riders in the gate for Sardinia. How many do you reckon are going to be making the trip to Australia?
I'm not saying that we should race. I'm just saying we should attend.
Well, we might be invited.
That's true.
It could be some sort of strange MXGP media invitational.
That's true. No, Australia should be fine because they'll get a lot of locals, won't they? They should do anyway.
Yeah.
China, less so. Sua was better as well. Third in the qualifying race, much better. He was happier with the bike, crashed in the first turn of Moto 2, and then raced without a front brake, hence no points. But a much better weekend for him. Similar to Herlings, a lot of people wanted to push that panic button, but no need. And additionally, There's no need to put the panic button on if you are a Yamaha YZ125 or 250 rider, because if you've been riding models from 2002 to 2021, listen up, because Polisport has something that's going to make your heart race. They are introducing the new restyling kit, a complete transformation for your Yamaha, giving your bike a 2024 look without any complicated modifications. The kit includes everything you need: a new gas tank, a full race seat, an airbox, all designed to fit seamlessly. No fuss, no hassle, just a fresh design that breathes new life. Your old YZ 2-stroke will look like it just rolled off the showroom floor. So, all the YZ 125 or 250 owners out there, it's time to transform your bike. Your Yamaha deserves it. Polisport has what you need. Thank you to Polisport and, of course, Prox Racing Parts for their support of this podcast. Just a couple of quick notes from MXGP, actually, that we should acknowledge. Mitch Evans returned. He's racing the ADAC, which is the German National Championship. So he jumped into MXGP on a stock bike just to see where he was at. I think he was surprised that he wasn't higher up, but it's just a testament to the level that continues to raise in MXGP. And crucially, he said he has no wrist problems, which is a blessing for him after his last 3 years. So good to see him back.
Yeah, definitely. And props as well to the MXGP TV production for finding him in the gate and getting him for an interview, because, you know, Mitch obviously has quite a checkered and interesting history in Grand Prix.
Yeah, his story will be an interesting one when it's all said and done. Very interesting. And then also Brian Bogers didn't race because he was still sick, as he was in Sardinia. And Valentin Guillot crashed on Saturday. I can't remember which day, but either or. And broke the... Hold on. I don't know if this is even an English word. I was very confused.
Google Translate.
He broke the L4 Apahais. Apahais? A Popeyes.
An L4. So what is lumbar? Is vertebra?
He said it isn't dangerous for his back, and he's going to do his best to race in Switzerland this weekend, of course, his home GP. But speaking of Guillot, transition, this is why I needed to bring this up. As a privateer, he needed the very best, and maybe he realised he didn't quite have that in the first 3 rounds. So now he is leaning on Prox Racing Parts to elevate his YZ450F, because of course he doesn't need a Polisport restyling kit. That's not going to help him. He's got an up-to-date bike, but what he does need is the extra performance and oomph that can be provided from Prox Racing Parts. Because once again, if you are a privateer like Kevin Hogmo on a satellite team trying to battle with the established teams and factories and greats, you need Prox Racing Parts to make the difference. And you can get the same parts by visiting pro-x.com, using the parts finder, putting in your bike, make, model, year, and seeing all that they have to offer. The selection will just absolutely blow your mind. But great to see our partner in Prox link up with Guillot, who needs all the help he can get as a complete privateer. And also Isaac Gifting, who has been great this year. He was third, I think, in time practice, running up there in the qualifying race, had a hard crash, didn't race because of that. That ended his weekend early, and I think he'll be back soon, though. I don't know. But a great season for Gifting, and Trentino also looked like it was going to be great. It should have been. That's a good track for him also, although I think they're all good tracks at this point. MX2. I already believe this is more impressive to me than Adamo's entire 2023 championship winning year.
Oh, wow.
This is already better. This is already more noteworthy. This is already more promising. There's more light at the end of the tunnel. Need to work on our emotions a little bit, because our outrage at the back markers in post-race interviews was a little much.
I think it's raw. Wasn't it good to see? I like that. You know, it's one case where the ridiculous post-race interview straight away actually shows something, you know, talkative, or, you know, shows some narrative. We're
not going to do it, but why on earth are we interviewing them twice?
Yeah.
Hey, hi, Andrea. Tell us about your race. Thanks, Andrea. We'll catch up with you in 2 minutes to ask you the same question.
Yeah.
Common sense, people.
Well, sometimes you don't get it. Like, I think in St. Jean, you didn't get the MX2 podium interviews. You know, they just sort of cut straight away from them and went to the MXGP race.
Well, I don't know. It's very confusing, but very impressive from Andrea Adamo. Even though he didn't win a moto, he was obviously showed the pace to do that.
Yeah, 3-2, where he won his first Grand Prix 2 years ago in Trentino, and that's 2 wins out of the last 3 GPs now.
Yeah, and he's doubled his career win total because he only won 2 GPs in his entire championship winning year, which again reinforces my point that this has been more impressive. Do you think he stays at KTM?
You were dismissive of Adamo, Lewis, at the start of the season. Are you ready to sort of concede a little bit more credit towards him now?
First of all, I hold my hands up and admit that I was dismissive, and I admit that he's proven me wrong, and I know he's aware that I was dismissive, and I hope that he he accepts my apology if he still listens. Second of all, yes. Okay, so let me ask you this. Kay de Wolf is the favourite for this championship. Fair?
Yes.
Who are you betting on being the biggest threat? Längenfelder, Adamo, or Everts? Obviously, Everts has now lost some points, but ignoring the points, just looking at it purely from a sporting point of view.
Well, after 3 podiums, I mean, it's hard not to look past Adamo. I mean, he's kind of in the richer vein of form, but I think Längenfelder he's there every single week with the potential to get top 3, top 2, top 4 results. But as we've said before, Simon just has that, I don't know if I used the phrase earlier with Febvre, that critical flaw of having 1 week moto. I think he knows he needs to sort of stitch 1, 2, 3 together. He either does really well on Saturday. I think he was 3rd in Saturday in Italy. But then, the first moto goes terribly and the second one's good, or vice versa. And that's the thing that's sort of going to keep him away from the consistency, because I can't believe I'm saying this, but Kay de Wolf's major merit and skill at the moment is being able to judge a race situation and react accordingly. I mean, he's able to push and go over the limit when he needs to, or he's able just to dial things back. It's like he's the most all-knowing overseer of racecraft in MX2 at the moment. And it does sometimes seem a little bit like a boy racing against, like a man racing against boys,
It's the ultimate compliment.
I think he has that level of authority, and he's just going to administer this campaign, to get another championship. And that's the best thing you can do, because the cliche is always, win the championship as slow as you can, to avoid injury or problems or controversy or whatever. And Kai's in that position, as we saw in Italy and also in Sardinia, where he sort of hung out a little bit more and got the job done. But Adamo is the guy, I think, who, is closest in age and also, the ability to do that. Next, I would say possibly Everts, but then he's still, I think, coming back to a position where he's trying to find his best form and speed. I mean, let's not forget the huge injury he had and also the layoff. And then Simon, I think, just needs an injection of something, whether it's inspiration or energy, a run of results, to put himself back up there.
Well, I'm not the guy to help Simon, clearly. I put him on a pedestal for years and it didn't do anything, so I'm out. But good shout about Simon, because your point is valid, because he's only been on the podium in both motos at a GP once this year.
Yeah.
So
that's what he needs to do. Is there anyone else for you that we should be looking at?
No, it's 2 KTMs versus 2 Husqvarnas, and actually, interestingly, Husqvarna and KTM are currently tied in the MX2 manufacturer standings, which is an interesting head scratcher for the higher ups in Austria, because they're essentially competing against each other once again. But I would like to say Everts would be the biggest threat to de Wolf. But like you say, there's a lot at play there with his comeback and stuff like that. So I'm still a little bit tentative that there's going to be a patch somewhere where he needs to rebuild. And picking through Adamo and Längenfelder, like I said last week, they're almost the same guy to me. They'll be on the podium more often than not. I don't think that either of them will win an exceptional number of GPs, but they will always be there and the gap will never go too big. So I don't really know how to split those 2 riders at the moment, except Adamo's won 2 GPs now, so I guess he's better than Simon.
Let's assume that Kay de Wolf moves up to MXGP next year, which he's likely to do even if he doesn't win the title. Then, which is the next rider in line that you would put on a 450? Would it be Simon? Would it be Adamo? Maybe even Everts?
That's the thing. This class seems quite underdeveloped to me. I don't know. I don't know if there's really a name apart from de Wolf that you'd want to go there. I mean, Benistant is out at the end of this year, as is Elzinga. which is actually a curious case for Yamaha because that kind of forces a bit of a reshuffle of the kind of mess. So fairly obvious ones. Of the contenders...
I think Everts' riding style would suit the bigger bike, and of course he rode the 350 fantastically well at the Nations 2 years ago.
Yeah, he did.
But I'll be more inclined to say, Adamo as well, I think has his kind of conservative riding style, but I wouldn't say he'll come into MXGP and be hitting podiums. I don't really know where he would slide into the order. I think Längenfelder's technique maybe is a little bit... I kind of file him alongside sort of Romain Febvre in terms of the transition from MX2 to MXGP, where, clearly a fast rider, but you don't really know what you're going to get on a bigger bike.
Yeah, Längenfelder, I think, needs more confidence and assurance at this point before going up against for heavyweights in MXGP. I don't know if any of them besides Kai would be an automatic podium guy, but I'd have to say Everts. I would, because I think that Längenfelder and Adamo's greatest strength lies in their consistency and their staying power, which I don't think is as prevalent in MXGP, because those same traits very quickly make you a mainstay in 9th place, rather than 3rd, 4th, as it would in MX2. But how about this? 10 motos. We've had 8 different MX2 moto winners with Kai de Wolf, Andrea Adamo, Simon Längenfelder, Liam Everts, Thibault Benistant, Sacha Coenen, Camden McClellan, and Ferruccio Zanchi. Kai is the only rider to repeat an MX2 moto win, so that's good. That's competitive.
Yeah.
I don't think anything needs to be said about the quality of racing in MX2 thus far this year. That's been celebrated non-stop by everyone, but that stat really speaks volumes.
Shame to see Camden McClellan crash like he did. And also, the Coenen brothers, fast, but, so error prone. I think there was a shot of Davide De Carli just sort of shaking his head at one point as if to say, here we go again. Another tumble. I don't know. It's that cliche, isn't it? Can work with speed, or the famous Lewis Phillips propism, fast but crashy. But when do you stop crashing? Or does it take like a snapped femur to make you suddenly, wake up and realize that you can't be pinning the throttle for, 30 plus 2 all the way through?
I did get actually a tip off that apparently Sacha Coenen's shoulder is banged up from these crashes. Not sure to what severity, but I think that he is labouring a little bit, which probably doesn't help the likelihood of more crashes. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly, Lucas is less of a problem, for sure.
Yeah.
Sacha, I don't know what you do there. I really don't know how you... because like we said at the top, Gajser had a reputation for crashing and stuff, but I don't think it was even close to the consistency of this.
And the points lost as well. Coenen would be a multiple Grand Prix winner by now. So I don't know. I just hope that, this guy's not going to hurt himself, because it doesn't seem... While it's admirable and it's exciting, it kind of reminds me of a bit of Austin Faulkner, where he's just completely on the pipe and really not able to rein himself in or have a check. You need sort of check and measures to have any sort of career, I think, to a reasonable extent. Yeah,
I would agree, especially if people start to see so much of a pattern that they almost stay away from signing said rider, just because they feel they've kind of lost hope that the light at the end of the tunnel will ever be reached. But similar to Renaux in MXGP, wild to think that Sacha had the red plate at one point and is now pushing 100 points down after 5 rounds. Renaux's is obviously much more explanatory because he's had injuries. Coenen's are just purely through his own errors. So, that's not great. But we need to also give Triumph credit, their first MX2 moto win. So that's good, important. It probably should have happened last year, but milestone.
They're on the way.
Yep,
on the way.
Good for them. Good for those guys. Great manufacturer that's really kind of making their position in the sport quite clear. And I finally wanted to talk in MX2 about Oriol Oliver because good, very impressive, very nice, very... he's a good rider. He's always been up there, top 10 guy, but he was split with his previous team, got a shot with Sean Simpson's EMX 250 team in MX2, obviously, and immediately showed some promise and delivered. And I know that deal initially was just for a couple of rounds, but after the second moto ride, I've got to think that someone somewhere wants to keep this going. And also, maybe this is further evidence to our theory that rather than have a Sean Simpson team focus on EMX 250 stars, have them focus on the next rung of talent in MX2 and see if you can generate them into the next factory rider. I think that is a case for this as well. So all very interesting.
Yeah, I think yes, but it's also harder to judge, and you have to go case by case, which sometimes can't be the case. Well, can't be the way to run a team. I mean, if you look at somebody like Kaz Volk, who is already looking like a fast MX2 rider, was one of the leading riders in the MX 250 in 2024. Volk is not going to sort of hang around too long in one particular team. He's going to be chasing factory rider status. So for an outfit like Sean's, a kind of a good European championship level team, also probably a Grand Prix team in terms of resources and setup, it must be hard to plan around that endless cycle of riders coming in and out as like a development squad, because sometimes it's going to go really well, as in the case of Volk, and you're able to get extra sponsors because of the extra attention, but then it might not work for the next 3 or 4 riders, and then suddenly you have to downsize and change priorities and stuff like that. So I think you either have to come in and play the long-term game, say like Steve Dixon, who even diversifies to embrace the Women's World Championship and running the likes of Courtney Duncan, or you have to sort of pick and choose your ground. And at the moment the team are looking to the European Championship, and a very sort of strong lineup there is there to do their business.
Well, I think there's always going to be a greater turnover of talent as long as you're an EMX 250 team. Whereas if you were that MX2B team, which I guess in a way Gebben is now. No, it's Van Venrooy now. What one left?
Yes.
Gebben left.
Gebben left.
But it's kind of what Van Venrooy is now, although it's a one-rider operation. It's not exactly... It doesn't scream inserted into the KTM
it's not stable,
family.
Is it?
No. So, but if you're Sean or SS24 KTM, then you maybe have Oriol Oliver for 3 years. Because he's never quite... He's good enough to, sit on that B team of KTMs and kind of be a supporting act, but never quite good enough for the factory team, I don't know. I feel like that provides more stability.
Yeah, but then he could have a season like Simpson had, in
15?
I want to say 2014. No. Before that, 2008. Where he's a privateer, and he finishes 4th in the World Championship in MX2, and then signs a factory contract. So if Sean's planning around Oriol Oliver, and cannot, and then he has a fantastic season and fucks off after 1 year, then it just makes it harder to run the team.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, that's what you get for being a development squad, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of comes with the territory, but I guess the positive side is that you're ingrained into the KTM network and you benefit from factory engines, riders, all of that sort of stuff. Final thoughts.
Are you sad you're missing the Swiss GP? The fragmented timetable?
I mean, it sounds ideal for friendship time.
Not for money, because Switzerland is pretty pricey.
Yeah, never forget the time that I got a footlong from Subway and it cost me £20. That will be ingrained in my mind forever.
Wasn't that also the time when MX Vice decided to turn up at the airport and decided that the hire cars were too expensive and therefore got back on the plane and went home? That was the heights of professionalism.
That was after my tenure, and I don't know if I should comment on that, Adam. No, I thought
it was a bit bizarre.
Well, I think a lot of people did. I liked the old Frauenfeld so much more than the new one. The new one's kind of a bit pokey, from what people have said. The infrastructure, travel to and from the paddock is insane. So it's not got the same magic, but hey, it's still good. Switzerland belongs on the calendar.
Good fans as well. And also good pick from sort of Central Europe. The location draws, I think, German fans, Italian fans, French fans. So it's a really good crowd there usually. Yeah, and crucially, should be good riders as well. It should draw those as well. So that's also important for MXGP. But no need to ask who you think's going to win in MXGP, because your answer would obviously be Tim. Also, I remember watching Gajser in a very sunny Swiss GP in 2016, and I was really impressed by how he's riding there. I mean, Tony Cairoli didn't have anything for him, even though Cairoli was battling physical problems that season. I don't know. I would say let's see what Febvre can do. If he can strike back, then there's very slim fade hopes of making a title dispute of this yet.
I could see this being the Lucas Coenen breakthrough weekend.
Okay.
Not entirely sure why, but my senses are tingling and they tell me that that could be.
We'll have to see the weather. Whether it could be a mudder or it could be, we have to have a look at that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll discuss it on the next week's show.
I normally check that. Right. Good.
Show will be a bit later then because the GP's on Monday. So I'm heading to Jerez for the Spanish Grand Prix first thing Thursday morning. So we'll have to record on Wednesday.
Well, same time as this week then.
Where are you going for Supercross this year? This weekend? I can't remember.
New York.
Oh, lovely. Okay.
Yep.
Another wallet buster.
Yes. I might. I don't know if I'm going to go to Times Square this time because I don't know if I care anymore.
Have you been there before?
Yeah. It was boring. Terrible. I paid like $50 in an Uber to get there and then got out, looked around, like basically spanned 360 degrees and was like, it's just a load of billboards.
Why don't you go for a walk around Central Park instead?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do that instead. But most exciting is that next to the stadium is the second largest mall in America.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's called American Dream.
Must be massive then.
Second behind the mall in Minneapolis, which is the biggest mall in America, which I've also done laps of. So that's my expertise.
Okay. Bend the plastic.
That's my that's what I'll come back with analysis on next week when we discuss the MXGP of Switzerland, the final part of this triple header. Then it'll be a weekend off and on to Portugal and then Lugo, so a double header. Thank you everyone for listening. Thank you to Prox Racing Parts and Polisport for their commitment and support of this podcast. It is of course much appreciated. Thank you to Paddock Pass Podcasts, Adam Wheeler for his time. You can listen to the Paddock Pass podcast from Jerez.
Yes,
right?
Good shout.
Yes,
yeah.
This weekend. So do that, and we will see you in 7 days' time to recap round 6 of the 2025 FIM Motocross World Championship. Thanks for watching.